So the next session is faculty panel. So this is more like very interactive session. Okay, so you guys should feel free to ask any questions that you wanted to ask, on how your PhD should be, any question, mentoring style, or anything that you have in your mind, research topic, whatever, they're going to answer it based on their experience so far. And we have people here who have been in William Mary for many, many years, right? So I'm not going to introduce them on my behalf. I'll just hand them over the mic and they can introduce themselves. And then we'll simply start with the questions that you have in your mind, okay?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Huajie Shao, and my research focus on machine learning.
Hi, Andreas Stathopoulos. I've been here the longest, I guess.
Hello, everyone. This is Janice, a new professor here in computer science department, focused on human-computer interaction, HCI.
Hey folks, I'm Adwait Nadkarni. I've been here for 7 years. I work in security and privacy.
So you can see we have the youngest faculty who joined this year to possibly one of the oldest faculty who has been here, right? So you will definitely get a wonderful answers. So feel free to, ask the question from different perspective. Okay, so I think let's get started, right? Let's hear whatever the first questions we have. And I can hand over the mic, and also we have some volunteers who are going to be here to move the mic. So any questions? So maybe I'll start first, and then you can follow it up with them. So one of the most question, what you look for in student that you want to mentor yourself? What qualities in terms of GPA, maybe in terms of something else that you want to look for?
I can answer. So I don't necessarily look at the GPA. I look for extremely motivated students who are creative and who are not really afraid to learn something new every day. Because essentially systems research and system security research keeps evolving. So we really need to adapt. And I just look for students who are okay with just learning new things and new systems without being scared of them.
So from my perspective, in addition to your past research experience, sometimes students may not have experience in the past, in terms of research, which is totally fine. But what I care about is when I interview students or when I talk to students, I will get a sense of, if you can ask great questions. Okay, I think asking good questions, what that means actually that you put your thoughts and you put your thinking process into answering my question. I think in that way I can really assess if the students have this research sense. So this is what I call research sense. So it's very hard to explain because there's no magic number regarding what is considered as a research sense. But I think it's really you put your thoughts after sometimes digging into some of the research questions that maybe you got asked from the faculty members, and based on your experience and your knowledge, can you answer the questions with confidence? And this is something that I care about. And also I care about personality, right? So I think doing your PhD is a long-term commitment, not just for time, but also your energy and also your physical and mental health, which is really important. So I think the personality, if your personality and the working style, do you feel like your advisor, your potential advisor matches your style? I think this is one of the most important to make sure that you can complete your PhD happily.
Excellent. I'll just add to that. My area requires a lot of background, mathematical background. It's okay if you don't have the background. It's better if you have. But what I'm looking for students is persistence and not impatience. So something says, I love this material. I don't care how long it's going to take. I'm going to learn it and work with you. So persistence is what I'm looking. That's number one for me. And again, I said I added to everything everybody else has said.
Yeah, for me, I like to work with students who are self-motivated and persistent. So Usually, I ask students to fundamentally understand the machine learning model instead of just tuning the model parameters. So I hope students can, solve some problems by themselves, and also students have a very good communication with me. Thank you.
Okay, any more follow-up questions? Also, people on the Zoom should, on the YouTube, should be able to post their question, and we'll repeat, and then panelists will answer.
Okay, so I have a question. So I think Janice and Adwait mentioned motivation. So one thing is, how do you determine if a student has motivation or not? And if I'm already a student here, is there a way that I can improve my motivation?
That's a really good question.
I think motivation is actually a little bit of a incorrect term to describe it. What I'm looking for is drive, right? Drive to actually do research, and drive to just do well and solve research problems. Now, one way I evaluate that is through my classes. So I generally hire students from my grad classes, and it's pretty easy to demonstrate that you're highly motivated and driven to do research if you do well in the research aspects of the class, in the research project, if you formulate great ideas, or even if you don't really have great ideas, if you pull through with a mediocre idea but do it in a really, really creative and spectacular fashion. So drive is pretty important to me. And now, if you're already someone who is who is here, who is looking to do something, but you don't feel motivated enough, maybe it's not you, maybe it's just a thing. You need to find something that motivates you. You need to find something that you really would like to do, and would inspire you to actually work towards it. So I don't really think you can improve motivation at something. You just have to find a thing that motivates you.
Well, in terms of motivation, right? So, my take is basically one. When it's during at the beginning of my PhD, I always talk to people about this. So I feel like my future students, they have really better potential than me. And well, I was back to a couple of years ago, so they're really good. And at the time, I don't feel like I know what my dissertation looks like, right? So I changed my whole idea during my fourth year. Okay, and I still have enough work to make it happen. So in terms of the research motivation and how to Yifan's question, so how can you determine if the students have the motivation to do research? I would say still by listening to their answers, the questions you ask them, and how to kind of get access, what are their thinking processes. So if they can explain a little bit background, and also it's not not like white and black answer. So it's more like really understand their thinking processes. If whether or not they can do some research in their offline or whatever, and to justify why they think that they propose. So I think this is one of things that you see they put effort into thinking. So that is one of the thinking, regarding the motivation. And also, I feel like how to improve your motivation. Oh, but I want to tell one or two very concrete example. When I talk to students or I interview students, right? So there's one student actually. The students has very unique background, and in terms of mental health, and this student really explain why he has suffered from personal kind of mental health issues. So this is really part of your personal experience from in the past that really motivates you to really examine what might be the technology, or what kind of roles technology can help us in addressing the mental health issue. So it's totally fine to have your personal past experience to justify why I'm looking really interested in this research area. But it's totally fine that I don't know what I'm going to work on. I just wanted to do research because I've been in industry for a while, and I just don't like to do this kind of work. So this is another type of motivation to see, okay, I don't. So sometimes ask us this question: if you don't know what you like, ask you what you dislike. and then rule out some of the possibilities. So in that case, you feel like if you want to kind of interested in doing research, why not to try? And then over time, if you're working with any potential advisor or research mentor, so we will see how that goes. And just something, in terms of motivation can be improved, I would say, in my opinion. And also the question about how to improve your motivation is one, when we talk about the motivation, of course, you have to some basic understanding within this domain. And if you're not in the stage, I dislike this field, so you feel like I'm probably okay with this field or this domain, and try to do some literature review. I think reading some papers and getting some inspirations. Can you see what are the potential research gaps? So this is a good way to start asking good questions by understanding this field at least a little bit.
One quick thing to clarify. So, when I say I really like to see drive in students. One thing that particularly shows is when a student goes out of the way to do something. For example, if you're approaching me as a potential advisor, if you send me an email, some students generally just tell me they're interested, and that's that initiates the conversation. Some students actually send me their thoughts on some of my recent work, and which are their thoughts, which are not generated by chat GPT summaries. So we're not talking about, I've also received some of those. But students often also find problems in my work, which are like real problems, things that can be improved upon in future work. And that shows significant motivation and drive. So that's another thing I'm looking for.
Any more questions? Go ahead, ask the question that you always had in your mind. Great.
How collaborative are some of the projects that are ongoing in the department?
I think this is again one of the very best questions. Let's start with the most experienced guy.
I'm not going to talk personally here. I'm going to say that collaboration is not something you dictate. It comes naturally, and many people seek it if there is a reason to seek it. So recently I've been collaborating with one of our faculty on high-performance computing. I know many people in my department collaborate in little twos and threes together. So so this is happening. This is beneficial to both. We merge our expertise and something new happens. So I have not done it much. I usually collaborate outside the department for obvious reasons, but many of my colleagues, they're going to share their experience on in the department collaborations.
Yeah, so since I'm working on machine learning, so I have a lot of opportunities to collaborate with professors in our department. For example, I'm working with Professor Gang Zhou on AI for smart health, and also I'm collaborating with Ashley Gao on domain generalization, and also I have one student, Shao, who is working with Yanf on AI for bullying network. So actually, in my group, there are a lot of collaborations in the department. Besides, I also have a lot of collaborations outside our school. For example, two of my students are collaborating with UIUC. The one student is collaborating with Virginia Tech and University of Maryland Park. So in the future, in my group, I always ask students to collaborate with different professors or different PhD students in our department or outside our department, because the collective intelligence is very important. Thank you.
I think this is a very common, very commonly asked questions, how collaborative. And one thing I actually want to say is that sometimes you may ask how to avoid over collaboration, right? And because, CS can be applied in different domains. And, I myself, other people as the same as we have a lot of collaborations every day. It's super, from the meetings from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's all of the collaborative meetings. So as a PhD student, I would say you don't need to worry about collaborations because computer science, as again, it can be very interdisciplinary research area, right? For me, is HCI is a human computer, and we have to have domain experts in different domains as well. And but you have to really make sure that you use your time wisely. Then when you have too many collaborations, make sure that you have your leading role at least in one project. That is, this is your career path. This is your PhD dissertation will include. And then you can spend some of your time on other side projects or 1.5 projects that you have to be the leader in that project meeting. That you take the voice and you take the lead. In that way, I think it's not just you ensure you have enough publication. The number of publications sometimes to students, that is to PhD students, I would say it's not the most important indicator. Too many publications can be a disaster at the end of the day, right? So, but you have to make sure that you have your first author publications, even if it's collaborative or not collaborative, to make sure you have your story to tell at the end of your dissertation defense.
Yep. To add to what Janice said, collaborations can be good, especially, collaborations, one way I see them is they allow you to learn some really cool things that you're not personally invested in that much. So, you can learn about areas that you're not familiar with, not focused on. In that way, they're good, but too many collaborations can be a distraction. Now, on that topic, at William Mary, the really cool thing is that we not only have tremendous interdepartmental collaboration, we also collaborate with non-CS disciplines like law or sociology, right? There are also those collaborations that are across departments, and there are several programs at NSF that encourage that. So you will see a lot of that. You'll get to participate in them, but like Janice said, I would agree. Just focus on your dissertation and try to learn new things through collaborations.
Let me add one more thing. What collaborations are good and which ones are bad? Janice already touched upon this. Try to do collaborations that you complement each other and not that you replicate each other. That is the number one thing. So don't expect that, say, oh, I have this friend of mine does exactly the same research, let's do something together. It usually is not very fruitful. Try to find something that you complement each other.
Couple of more things to add, because collaboration could be used in a broader term. So almost everybody sitting here does work with undergrads also, and they are great collaborators that actually help the lead author in doing experiments, doing some development, or many other stuff. And the other thing is other faculties are also collaborating with other schools like medical school and things. I think Gang is collaborating with some medical school outside of the William and Mary as well. So you'll find wonderful opportunities to collaborate with undergrad till very much till different school and other PhD or postdoc people.
I have a question from the YouTube live chat. So if someone is not very confident in nature per se, but shows consistent results, how much potential will faculty see in them as a TA? And I would say also as an RA as well.
I think you need to repeat that question again.
So if someone is not very confident in nature per se, but shows consistent results, how much potential will faculty see in them as a TA?
Or RA.
Or RA, yeah.
I think all this can be taught and can be improved. I don't believe in confident versus non-confident. There's a tendency for some people to be more confident, but you can teach them to be exactly as confident as the other guys. So I don't think that's an impediment in any way.
So I believe that confidence is earned, right? The more you know, the more confident you get about your discipline. Unearned confidence can actually be a pretty bad thing. So I would take a student, who is a little iffy, a little not confident about communication, because I think that's where this is coming from. It's about communication, right? But still, if they know their thing, I think confidence can be taught, like Andreas said.
So my understanding towards the question is that, in terms of personality, outgoing versus, less outgoing, and then to be a so-called more successful RA or TA, basically a PhD student. So that's my take from that question, right? So I guess people's personality can change over time. So I think I don't know, like if you can tell from all the professors here or myself, do you feel like I'm outgoing? Who you think I'm outgoing, and then you can raise your hand. Yes. So sometimes it can change. So during my first, year of PhD, I was feel like maybe not that confident because I have 0 publications before, I entered my PhD, right? So, and over time, people can be outgoing in some circumstances or in some contexts. So people will become more confident when you have when you have this chance to show your expertise. So think about when you have your expertise in whatever TV shows, right? So you're very talkative at some point. So always there's some point that that can make you feel a little bit more confident. Well, in terms of research, over time, as you gain your research experiences and your research maturity grows, I think it will help you to gain your confidence level. And so it doesn't really matter, in nature, it's less outgoing versus outgoing. So it will grow eventually, and just don't be afraid of asking questions, and there's no stupid questions. And this is, I feel like the students don't need to really worry about it. And also it's your mentor or your advisor's responsibility, and they have their own strategies to help you to grow both your confidence and how to make sure that you address all the things professionally in your daily life.
Yeah, for me, I totally agree with Janice, and that the personality can be changed. I can share my own story with you guys. So when I was a freshman in the college, I barely talked to any students in the class. Then, after 2 years later, one teacher told me that you shouldn't be alone because humans are social animals. So at that time, gradually changed my personality. So I like to, maybe play ping pong, basketball with my friends. So after that, right now as a professor, I have a lot of collaborations outside because I totally changed my personality. Thank you.
Right, I think great answers, right? We have so many personal stories. Go ahead and ask next questions. Yes.
Because we're working on computer science, there's definitely a lot of engineering work. My question is, how to balance engineering and research as a PhD student?
That's another wonderful question.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So actually in my lab, students most work on the research paper, except for, for the like the annual report or NSF project, maybe we should do a demo. But most times we will focus on science instead of engineering.
So because of the background required in my field, we start with engineering. We first have well-known ideas and we try to implement them. And I'm not talking about just implementing in coding, implement the ideas, see how they work. During the engineering process, I teach my students how to get the science right and how to get the next ideas out. So this is how it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but that's how it works in my group.
I think this is a really good question. I think the question re-emphasized, okay, what is the difference? Not necessarily difference, but how can we treat engineering versus research? So what it can be, is that my question? Is that your question? So can engineering be research, or can engineering be part of the science? This is a very hot debate, I think, even on social media at some point. So my understanding is that two keywords here. One is methodology, and second is who are talking about or who are talking to, right? So I think engineering is, there's one term in HCI, and we call it the research through design. Okay, the keyword research through design, which means that you design something, and well, during this whole process of design, you find some of the research opportunities. And there are a lot of good papers regarding this methodology. And this is why I emphasize the importance of method and methodology, which has become a very crucial, important part of doing science and doing computer science, is that we have rigorous method. Actually, a different size of method can be considered as a methodology. So this is a different two terms. And I think doing science means that we follow a strict and rigorous methodology and to achieve the design or engineering or the product that you would like to do. And you know, well, in terms of, you know, can engineering, and also the hard debate regarding what is can be considered as the engineering versus science, I would say in terms of the contribution, asking about, do you feel like your work makes contribution? And there's many ways of defining what is a contribution. So not just, you know, we're creating a new model that is the only thing about contribution. And for HCI, for me, so understanding how people use the system in their daily life is also part of the contribution. So I think there's really I would say, if I want to teach a mini course, I just want to say, okay, what is can be considered as a contribution, and how we see and which the audiences we are talking about when we think about the contributions, and what is the methodology, and what are the methods to achieve your rigorous methodology. So I would say, make sure that you emphasize this methodology and thinking about the contributions to this community that you are talking about and you're talking to. I would say this is the two things when you think about is engineering is a part of research.
So I did my PhD in system security, and this, you know, this conflict between engineering and what is engineering, what is research, is really close to me, because a lot of times the kind of research we do in system security can sometimes be, you know, just reduced to engineering, and people will be like, well, why is this research? Why is it not just engineering? So one thing I want to tackle there is, first, it's never just engineering. Engineering can sometimes be as hard or much harder than research. Now, here is the difference for me. First of all, it's very specific to area. So when you do research, you'll often do research in one area. You'll cater to one specific scientific community, and that community might have its own view, one perception of where to draw the line. So that's something to consider. Second, you really want to think about whether you're generating new knowledge, whether it's through engineering, whether it's through research, whether it's something else. Science and research is about generating new knowledge. And if you're doing that, and if you can articulate that, if you can articulate the intellectual merit of what you're doing, then that is valuable scientific contribution. So that is important for research, that's important for a PhD. We don't have to get into this difference between research and engineering.
Let me add one more thing. I'm not sure I understand the difference between research in engineering and research in science. Research is research. There is difference between engineering and science, but it doesn't have to be. It's a gray area. The poles of this area are separate, but it's a spectrum. And you can do perfectly good research in engineering. You can come up with new methodologies to build new things, new whatever things. I say things, artifacts. We use the word artifacts a lot in our community. Exactly the same thing you can do to use new artifacts. And these artifacts could be theorems in mathematics. I don't care what it is. And you would go to the other pole. So research is research. I don't think you should paint yourself as an engineer or as a scientist. You should paint yourself as doing new things.
I think that's a great takeaway, right? The knowledge generation is the key here. If your engineering stuff can generate the knowledge, well, that's the research.
Sorry, I just want to chime in. I think my research is more engineering focused, and my research is building infrastructures. So I have a rule to my student that's called Boy Scout rule. So basically, you come to go to camping, then your goal is camping is not to clean the camping site. So, but you should leave the camping site to make it cleaner, or at least not dirtier than the time you come. So while I always ask my student to work on a research paper, by the time you work on the paper, you really have to build infrastructure to help your paper, and build it well, then contribute to the open source project. It's just my style.
Thank you, Ifan, for chipping in. We have one question from YouTube, and then I'll again come back to you.
So the question from YouTube is, could professors help students find suitable companies to work after graduation? Because most of the students want to make progress in the working environment in addition to the academic environment.
Yes. The short answer to that would be yes, both in terms of internships and jobs, and not just at companies, not just in industry, also in academia. Your potential advisor will and should do everything they can to expose you to enough opportunities so you find what you're looking for, because that is the most important thing, right? So it's not just limited to industry. From my perspective, I've graduated one student so far, because I'm in my 7th year now. He went to IBM Research, and he had an offer a year before he even graduated, and that offer came out of a collaboration that he was instrumental in. So generally, when it comes to industry research labs or academic collaboration, that is how things happen. Students also go on the open academic market. That is where professors write recommendation letters and also make introductions as and when effective. But absolutely, your advisor will do everything they can to get you a job.
Well, I don't know if I'm eligible to answer this question or qualified to answer this question, because I don't have students who graduate from their PhD, right? But I have a students that I mentored before. They graduate from their master degree and undergrad. So, and to that case that I can talk about this case. So you see, one, how to be supportive. One, of course, well, the short answer is yes, right? Of course. And one is that you will get, recommendation letters from advisors. This is simply the most simple thing. And the other one is your advisor should support you regarding different resources, and, go to the conference when you are going to the conferences, and introduce you to other senior members or other faculty members and to the industry, collaborators. So this is another very effective approach when you're thinking about finding a job, because there's a lot of stories behind the scene that you don't really know, and these are the something that building upon your advisors, your connections and relationship, that can help you to not necessarily take a shortcut, but it is introduce you to a broader audiences. So definitely this is the why we are being professor and being a teacher, right? So ish is that we wanted our students to be successful.
Right. So yes, yes, and yes. I mean, that's why we're here. That's exactly right. Of course, we're here to promote science and everything, but we're not here just to teach you or teach students. We're here to help you promote your careers. This doesn't stop after you graduate with your PhD, by the way. Okay.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. So currently, my senior students is the third year, but I have some, collaboration in industry like JP Morgan and AT&T. So in this year, I'm gonna recommend 2 students to do summer internship in at AT&T and JP Morgan, because one of my lab mate is a director of JP Morgan. Another one is the manager at IBM Research Lab. So I always encourage my PhD students to do summer research internship in the big companies or very famous research labs, so that it can broaden their horizons. They can better understand what the other companies are doing, what real world problems they need to solve. For example, last year, I recommend one student to do summer internship at AT&T Lab. So after internship, their mentor sent me an email said my student is the best internship in the past 8 years in her group. So this year, they already told me let my students to do intern next summer.
So to add to that, I think the advisor's job, whether you're a MS thesis student or a PhD student, is not only to help you secure a position you want, but to help you find what you're really looking for. Especially if you're a potential PhD student, you're not going to really. I would recommend not being fixated on an industry position, an academic position, starting from the first semester. Just like what you said, get exposure to everything. Do an internship, do research projects, and then work with the advisor to find out exactly what you want to do, if you want to go the academic route or the industry route, and then the advisor will help you proceed accordingly, and even just develop a publication record that's suitable for either case.
Okay, let me just add one personal story to that. Sometime your paper speaks for yourself. So when I published my second paper in a top tier storage conference, I automatically got a couple of messages asking if I'm on the job market. I told no, I'm not. Then they responded saying, you are welcome to join us as an intern. And they convinced me enough to join their research group. So, things like that can happen, and research can speak for itself. Okay, next question.
My question is, what kind of progress do you expect from your students within a span of 3 or 4 months in terms of research experience?
That's a really tough question because there is no one answer for it. It really depends on the student's background. It depends on what the student wants to work on. I've had students who've had top tier publications uh, right after joining William Mary, right in their first year. I've had students who had their first top tier paper after 4 years. Really depends on what they want to do. For example, one of my students wanted to learn a more HCI like area, and I'm not into human factors. I do mostly software and systems, but she took 2 years to learn it and introduce the rest of the group to it, and now we have 3 or 4 papers in that area. So sometimes if someone is willing to take a risk, it takes time for them to publish, but when they publish, it flows, right? So it really depends on. So but there is no criteria as such. The only criteria is when you graduate, you need to have at least for me, it's 3 first author top tier papers. There might be, if you want to go into industry or government, I might be able to relax that a little bit, but at least 3 good first author papers. That's how I would put it.
So your question is more about from professor's perspective, like our expectation, right? Okay. Well, first of all, I think there are 2 questions maybe I want to ask you, and not necessarily you, but maybe the audiences. One is depending on which area or which domain you are working in, right? So I know for different areas in systems, you have to really a long time to build a system, and so it's totally different from other areas. For HCI, it also depends. So even for data collection, we spend half a year just for data collection from our own self. But I think in general, and also another question is depending on your own research strategy and your research experience. But in general, I would say within the 3 to 4 years, usually it should be the advisors or your mentors, right? They hopefully they will set up like a overall timeline or frame. Okay, do we have a publication deadline for this conference and when that will happen? And within this 3 months, if you're a first time writer, right? So for a top tier conference, it may take you, I would say, 2 months or so if you want to really get a very polished version. Okay, not that very dirty sheet dropped by the end of the day for the submission. So think about having a deadline first. Of course, it's something that you have to work with your advisor or a mentor to figure out what might be the next key milestone, and then you kind of phase out a little bit to see, okay, how much time I need to work on this part and the next part. So it's a little bit of if you have been working in this industry, is kind of prioritize your things and make a little bit plan. So sometimes it's very often that you have to double your time and we're 1.5 times in reality that what happens in the real situation. But I would say I see the progress, and I make one-on-one meeting with my students, and I see how much progress has been done and what else can be, can be done in a better way. So this is something, within 3 to 4 months, actually a one semester. They're really depending on your questions and your domains. It's very hard to, generalize my answer, but hopefully give you a sense, how am I on the right track in terms of timeline? And one other thing I would say for PhD students is that try to not miss important paper deadlines, right? And I think I was able to do that during my PhD. If I want to submit to Kai every September, I usually do that. I can definitely do that. So make sure you kind of have a thing in your mind, and as long as you feel okay, and I think advisor should be able to see your progress and your hard work. Yeah.
It is a really difficult question. It depends, as on all the things that my colleague said. It also depends on the time of the same for the same student. If it is in the second, third year of their studies versus the fifth year of the studies, expectations will change. It might change on the subject for the same student on the same discipline. One paper might be difficult. You run out on snafus and problems. It's going to take you forever. Okay, you live it through. And in my area, it's rather more flexible in the sense that we don't have this yearly deadlines on conferences. We are working more with journals. I know we are a minority in computer science, but I don't put deadlines. I'm weird. I'm saying when this is done correctly and I'm happy, we send it. And I don't expect my students to have like 100 papers by the time they graduate. If they have 1 or 2 great journal papers, I am so happy and the community is happy. So you see, it's so dependent on everything. The expectations should be set in a dynamic way between the advisor and the student, completely dynamic, and agree with agreement.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the project you are working. For example, some of my students working on very challenging projects, so maybe it will take them like 2 or 3 years to publish the first paper. I'm not in a hurry. I just focus on the quality of the paper instead of the quantity. Currently AI or machine learning is very competitive. There are like maybe 10,000 papers per conference, right? But not always ask students to some paper in a hurry, especially when a paper is rejected. We have like a 6 or 7 AI conference. I always let them skip one conference and spend 3 or 4 months polishing the paper. Then they can submit the paper. Otherwise, I think their paper will be rejected again. So yeah, I really focus on the quality of paper.
Okay, before we go to Anna, let me just ask a clarification again to Adwait, who said a student actually wanted to do something else and it took 2 years for them to ramp up. So how he measured the progress in, let's say, each 3-4 months?
Okay, and that's a good question. So that particular kind of research is not something I've done, or even my advisor or his advisor before him. So nobody in my academic lineage has done human factors research, right? So I was probably the first to try doing it. I wasn't measuring progress in a way as much as I was just keeping her motivated and learning along with her. And that really just helped me get up to speed without her having to teach me every single thing every few weeks. But it was not like she was just blindly learning the area. We were still working towards a project. So there was still a goal. There were still certain things we were trying to do. And we were trying to actually work on 2 or 3 different projects using a similar technical approach. So the projects kept us on track. You know, when you're making progress on a project, you know it. When you're at a standstill, you also know it. So there wasn't any explicit separate measuring or tracking that I had to do.
Okay, so there's a question from YouTube. It's actually a couple of questions, but they're related. So this is about students who want to go into academia after they graduate. So is it possible for students to go to, say, a higher ranking university as a faculty? And also, what things are most important for the student to do in order to prepare for faculty positions while they're students?
I can start. Earlier in the day, you just saw an example of a speaker from yesterday who went to high rank university. We've got some more who went to high rank university in the audience here. Essentially, eventually in your academic community, if your publications speak for themselves, so publications is sort of the currency. You have to be, in order to prepare for the academic market, you need a good publication track record. And like what you said previously, right, you don't just want quantity, you also want quality. So if you've got like 20 publications, but all of them are okay, you're still probably not going to get that many interviews, at least at places that you would want to go to. So the quality of your publications and the number both matter, and that's what you should focus on, especially if you want to go on the academic market.
So the question is about how to prepare for being in the academic job market. Okay. Well, I think in addition, we always talk about research and, getting your publications out there in a high quality, and we all know that, right? So, but in addition to that, I want to add regarding other aspects, maybe like teaching experience. So teaching is also an important part. So that's why I think is, even when I was doing my graduate school at Georgia Tech, and we are also required to do like 1 semester, actually 2 semesters of TA, that is in addition to our research. So both the TA and our at the same time, which is horrible. I'm not sure. But of course, you have to get in your teaching experience. Hopefully, you can get your TA experience, and if you can give guest lectures, or you can be registered instructor experience. That's a bonus point. But also focus on outreach and leadership roles in your community, as well as focus on the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity. So this is not just, on the paper. It is really important, it's happening. And how can you make sure that you address these are the DEI things in your everyday life? And what exactly the things you have done in the past? So being more concrete in all the statements, because you're talking about more about being on the job market for academia. So show the evidence, not just saying things. So that make sure that within the 5 years, try to do something different. Make the difference in your community, and to ensure the DEI is really happening. I can continue regarding the gender biases, whatever, but I think this is something very important to not just focus on research, but also the teaching and outreach. Make the people in your field know you is way more important, actually, sometimes. If you have only one paper, amazing paper, that make sure if you can make this the whole community in your, or a lot of people in your community know you, even within just one paper, you're pretty good, I would say. It's your branding. Yeah.
Excellent point. I would go further. Teaching is, some universities actually don't, used to say, we don't care so much, but they all do nowadays. They want persons that are complete. The DI is a very important. They need to show. You need to show to them that you have clearly thought and acted about these issues. Teaching. Try to get the opportunity. At William and Mary, we give opportunities to people that want to teach a class as an instructor of record for 1 semester. They get the experience. They get the student evaluations. They can talk in their letters afterwards how educative that experience was for them. But don't do only that. Go to conferences. When you go to conferences, talk to people. In fact, before you talk to people, make sure that you can present in the conferences, and then talk to people. And then go as many conferences as you can. When I was a grad student, I was, well, just after the dinosaurs fell. I used to go to conferences that didn't even have papers. That's unheard of, right? But I did go there because I needed people to see me, and I needed to see people learn things and be known. Use your social animal. I'm using your analogy, right? Use your social animal self, right? Just be out there. And while you do that, keep in mind exactly what Janice said, what Adwait said. So all these things are beyond and above research and how important the new things that you did.
Yeah, so for me, usually at the end of first year, I will talk to my PhD students whether they want to go to industrial academia. So if they want to go to academia, I try to use my resources to help students. For example, I will ask students to collaborate with some professors or senior professors in other schools like URUC, or maybe in the future like CMU. I have friends. And also, I try to let students make a plan in advance. For example, I will encourage him to, for example, listen to the distinguished speaker in our department. Always encourage him to ask a question for the from the distinguished speaker's talk, because maybe in the future when he went to interview, for example, he go to interview in a university, maybe the distinguished speaker will memorize his question, then he may have a better opportunity to get an interview. So I always try to let students to expose themselves. Yeah. Thank you.
So I kind of want to not be against, but when you talk about what kind of questions you want to ask to whom, I would say yes, it's important to ask questions to distinguished speakers, but also in terms of what kind of people you like to hang out. It's not just very senior people that use on the sky or anything. Make sure that you have your cohort. Your cohort is the key component throughout your whole career. The friends you hang out could be the same year or similar years, and or junior faculty member. A lot of people, junior faculty members these days, and they actually, they reach out to me that, okay, Janice, do you need any help or do you need any guidance or anything? So these are the people I personally feel like I love them. I love the people in my community. I love talking to them. I feel the passion. I feel the love. I feel the comfort. I think this is the most important thing. Who are you going to talk to? What kind of questions you want to ask? These are lifelong friends and mentors.
Let me add one more thing. 100% on that. That cohort of researchers you're going to find at your stage at conferences, they're going to stick with you for life as some of your best friends. And they're going to be the best colleagues you've had. Why? Because not only are they the same age, the same problems, but they're even in the same area. They will help you, you will help them. So yes, 100% on that.
Yeah. So one thing to add to everything, basically what everybody said here was that essentially when you're going up on the job market, right, what really matters is your visibility in your community, because that is what is going to get you interviews. Now, one way to enhance that, and this is something we have done consistently, is, and this applies to mostly communities where you have more than one top conference. So in security, we have 4. So what we usually do is if a student gets a paper in a particular top conference, we send them to present a poster in the previous one. That's like 2 months before. So not only do you get to talk about your work, you also get to subtly brag that it's actually in the next top conference that's coming up in 2 months, and people already know you by the time they get to your talk. So it's important to really advertise your work, advertise your talk even before it's published, and that's one good way to do it. But the other thing is just volunteer everywhere. Like volunteer for events like this. If your university is hosting a symposium, volunteer. present posters. Like poster sessions are the best ways to get invites to a bunch of things that are useful on the job market. So definitely do that. Another quick thing on the DEI aspect. So DEI, good DEI statement is a reflection of not just what you've done, but also the opportunities available at your institution. So you might be in a situation where your advisor or your institution doesn't have those opportunities to offer to you, right? And that's okay. If you're in that situation, all you really need to do is look at what the target institution, the one where you're applying to, has, and focus your DEI statement purely on talking about what you can do to participate. And that's okay. Sometimes you don't have the experience, but you at least have potential. And that's what you're hired for.
Okay, we have time for just one last question. Right.
Okay, first, okay, I'm very impressed by the four professors talking about PhD student study research collaborations, but I just raise one question. Okay, how do CS professors prepare PhD graduate for non-CS disciplines? Yeah, actually, I received my PhD from computer science at Queen's University in Canada. At that time, the job market for computer science is very competitive. So I work at the business school, then called the Department of Information Technology. When I joined the school, okay, I feel a lot of challenges because the difference between the CS and the information technology. The first one is the publications. Yeah, in computer science, we all value the top conference papers, but in many other disciplines, they just accept journal articles. So I feel I have a hard time to transit from the conference papers to journal articles. Yeah, and another one challenge is I believe probably most disciplines they have their own traditions. Okay? They have good reason to respect their disciplines, but they may not know the other disciplines. So when PhD students from computer science work in other discipline other than the CS, okay, then feel a lot of challenges. So I would like to hear how the professor here, if your PhD student in future go to a discipline other than computer science, how you prepare them, get them ready.
Huh? Oh, okay, be short. Okay. This is a good question. So thank you so much, Adwait, actually, because he handed this microphone to me because my undergrad, I wasn't really originally from CS, so I don't have, bachelor degree in computer science. Actually, I have fine arts degree, in the past. So, and pretty much fine arts and computer science, which is an outlier. So I can happily to answer the question. One is, I think, if you are really care about this transition, so are you talking about this transition period in also the challenges, right? Okay, so one of the things is that I would say is your motivation of doing research, and because you decided to switch the major to CS, there should be a reason for that, and I think your motivation should be a good one to help you to pursue the whole PhD. And the other reason about, talking about, there are two questions actually. The other question is about how to prepare the students from non-CS or from, different styles, talking to different other domains experts. I think being open-minded is regarding your colleagues, your atmospheres of the department is the key. So, well, as a HCI researcher, so, it's not very traditional CS background. I got toasted a lot of times, like, because people from different domains or engineering, they don't really understand or they don't really get it why this is a contribution. And I would say, if in the future, I would suggest my future students is that you don't want to be surrounded by a toxic environment. So this is an important part when you go to on the market. Make sure you find a place where you feel like it's the home, right? And the other one, how to prepare, is to make sure your students can work on different flavors of the research, not just building tools, but maybe a theory part of it. For HCI, not just doing formative interview study, qualitative study, but also building tools and also the evaluation. So having some different aspects or breadth of the research is important, I would say, to help to build these bridges. Yeah, I think I talked too long, but
I think we are running out of time because we have next panelist ready. So, but feel free to talk to one of our distinguished panelists here after the student panel is over. So let's thank the speaker and panelist one more time. And it's now time for the student panel. I invite all the student panelists and also our recent alumni who will introduce themselves, and you'll see that some of the questions that you asked regarding getting placements to higher ranked universities, you will see some live examples. Thank you. And I'll hand over the mic to Colin, who is the moderator for the student panel.